Greetings, friends. Just a disclaimer up top. This is a book with a lot of casual slurs, almost all of which we managed to work around it, of course, and attitude about everyone who's not a rich, white, American-born man that ranges from patronizing to condescending to just pure fear and loathing. We try hard to keep the bad stuff from kind of ruining and dominating the conversation, but you absolutely should avoid this book. Do not read it. And if these times have been hard on you the past couple of weeks, you may want to skip this episode as well. We totally understand. And for those who don't, here it is.
From everything that's happened, from the way people act, the threats that have been made, I get the sensation of conspiracy at work.
This is I Don't Even Own a Television, The Coven.
1, 2, 3. There are books that are good, there are books that are bad. There's some books so fucking awful you wish you never had read them at all, 'cause a novel can ruin your life. Hey buddy, I don't even own a television.
Greetings, welcome to I Don't Even Own a Television. It's a podcast about 80s hardcore albums recorded in a basement that occasionally talks about books. This time around, I am J.W. Friedman, as usual.
And I am Chris, unindicted co-conspirator Collision, and we have a special guest here in Coven to help us talk through the Coven. It's a little Easter egg for those American movie fans out there. Jeb, how's your conspiracies?
I'm getting them fed every day. You know, I don't know whether to keep my mask off or on. I don't know what's going to choke me, but I know something will.
Definitely pull all of your funding out of Bitcoin right now because, that's about to happen. And inject yourself with bleach.
Anyway, yes, don't do that, kids. Or adults. Nobody do that. So yes, we have an extra special guest this time around. Ancient friend of the show, predates me as a friend of the show, if such a thing can even be imagined. Jeb, why don't you say hi and introduce yourself to the nice people?
Hi, I'm Jeb Lund. I was the inaugural guest on this podcast, and I've been able to dine out on the episode that we did where we read the O'Reilly book for, I don't know, like 5 years now, and that's pretty much in my like top 5 things I've done probably professionally. Is we just roasted O'Reilly for like an hour and 20 minutes.
For those who haven't heard it, it's the episode entitled Those Who Trespass. I think it's episode 5 or 6. And it's about a spy novel, thrill ride, written by Bill O'Reilly. So yeah, go check that out. We had a lot of fun with it. But it's always a pleasure to have you on, Jeb. And we're glad that you came on to talk with us about... Let me just quote this directly from the cover. A sensational novel of Washington intrigue and witchcraft by Watergate conspirator E. Howard Hunt, writing as David St. John, The Coven.
And I know for a fact this book well predates Spinal Tap, but there is something incredibly Spinal Tap about all the cover copy on here, and I don't really know what it is. Maybe it's just David St. John sounds too much like, Michael St. Hubbins.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly clunky. The only thing clunkier is that the back copy says, masquerading as David St. John, he has written an authentic thriller. A novel that reflects his intimate knowledge of Washington and political intrigue. And I have gotten hung up so many times on the word authentic there. Like, what? I can't even parse it. What could it mean?
I think it's just authentically thrilling. You know, America loves authenticity and, like Bruce Springsteen and stuff like that. So what I'm saying is this novel has an American flag in its back pocket.
I like the idea that, he's trying to pass off the notion that this is the way you insert the host into the female vessel for the Black Mass when you're at Ben Bradley's house. Now, Kissinger, he does it differently, but this is very this sort of like Beltway Coven, if you will.
The Beltway Coven.
So,
awesome.
So this is the let's take a step back. This is written by E. Howard Hunt, who, if you're an extremely cool person like me, you know mostly from well past their sell-by-date episodes of Doonesbury and some records on the National Lampoon record label that your dad had lying around.
That's where I knew the name from. I read a lot of Doonesbury before. Pardon me. I read a lot of Doonesbury before I was old enough to understand it, and the name came up a lot. And I was wondering why it sounded so familiar. I think it's been occupying a place in the back of my head since.
Now, Jeb, your presence here, I think, safe to say, ensconces this in very special episode territory. You, I believe, found this book and foisted it on us. So, defend yourself and your choices.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll roll it all the way back into pity then. So you're going to feel bad about how you asked that question that way. My wife had total postpartum depression for 3 years, just was asleep. And one of the nicest things we could do for her was take my son up to meet grandma and spend time with grandma for 10 days. So my wife could just sleep and be a person and not have to work for anybody else, which, she really needed. The problem was, I had a toddler at the time, and the drive to grandma's is 7 hours.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you've been in a car with a toddler for 7 hours, but they're way better when they're not awake, especially when you're the only one in the car and you can't do anything about that vomit or the thing that fell and they're screaming. So it became really important for me to focus in on what is going to be the podcast that is going to hold me wrapped for 7 hours driving from 9 p.m. to 3, 4 in the morning. And so anytime there would be something that blew up, like Serial or S-Town or O-Town, whatever, I would save it because that's going to keep me from turning into an accidental family annihilator, somewhere outside the We Bear All sign in Micanopy.
I know that sign.
So yeah, anybody, you driven I-75, you know it. You know what I'm talking about. So I saved the first season of Slow Burn, which was this long kind of troll of the Trump administration, our life through it, because it was a look at how people experience Watergate if they were just consuming the mass media. And there's this episode where there's a long stretch dedicated to what was Howard Hunt's wife doing with $10,000 in cash in a plane that crashed outside Chicago, into a neighborhood. And they just sort of casually mention at the end of this, he also wrote spy thrillers. And I was like, well, shit, I got to do something with that. And of course, I completely forgot about it because I got home, I didn't write it down because I'm not going to kill everybody in the car,
I think you mean he also wrote authentic spy thrillers. Just needed to get that out there.
Oh, wait, yeah, sorry. Did you mean sensational novels of Washington intrigue and witchcraft?
Right, yes.
Anyways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I just need to maintain this book's veneer of authenticity. So, yeah.
Cheerfully amended. But I forgot about it, and then they made a video series of Slow Burn of that. And then I saw that, and I'm watching it, and, with my non-depressed wife now, I was very happy. And I saw it come up, and I was like, oh, spy novels. I went right to Amazon, and I started searching for E. Howard Hunt spy novels, and anyone that had 3 copies. That was it. And then I saw the Coven, and I read, first of all, the authenticity leapt right off the page, right? So I wanted that. But then also I was like, well, maybe this is going to be kind of like a Pizzagate thing. There's a witchcraft circle somewhere in D.C., and there's spirit cooking, and this is how Jeffrey Epstein and the Clintons and the Trilateral Commission, how all that stuff came together. And of course I was wrong, but...
there's not a lot of Washington intrigue happening in here, and that was the first thing that surprised me a lot. There's a lot more jazz intrigue.
There's a lot of jazz intrigue. So this is a Fawcett book, which is not an imprint that means a lot to me, but it is the kind of extremely classy paperback imprint where you will have an inset box off the title page about how you could just order these if you happen to live near, a bookstore with some standards, which I always like. And the thing that I love most in a paperback, besides an insert trying to sell you cigarettes, is a back page where it lists the other books in the series. So E. Howard Hunt has kind of a Robert Galbraith / J.K. Rowling pen name thing, because he wrote one book as Gordon Davis called Where Murder Waits, and then 3 books as David St. John: The Sorcerers, Diabolus, and The Coven. So I think maybe he tried his hand at, perhaps, I'm going to speculate, a less occult-laden thriller. And maybe it didn't go so well. So I think he maybe steered into your more dark realms, if you will.
And if you're going to pick a pen name to write, kind of occulty things, it needs to be a St. John for sure. There needs to be a saint somewhere in that name so that it sounds sufficiently heavy metal.
Yeah.
He's the patron saint of quality witchcraft.
The kind you just don't get anymore.
Yeah. The kind of authentic quality witchcraft you've been searching for at a price you can afford.
Which sounds great. You know what doesn't sound great? This book. You know what else sounds great is perhaps giving the beloved listener some more insight into this book. And a way we like to do that frustrates everyone, especially my girlfriend, is that we try to get across the narrative of the book in but 1 minute. And what's fun for me when we have a guest is that I can pawn that off on them. Jeb, are you prepared to, if I might steal your phrase, take the expositional challenge?
I thank you for pointing out that I did steal this idea from you guys. We were very open about that, but we deserve to be called on the carpet for it. Yes, I am prepared.
I'm not trying to call you on the carpet. I love that phrase.
I think it's just... if you're doing something narrative, it's good to have a summary up front so people don't spend the whole time going, what are they talking about? So let's do a plot in 60 seconds. Here's a song.
You got 60 seconds. Scream in the shout. 60 seconds. Go leave them down. 60 seconds. Open your mouth and tell them what the goddamn book's about. All
right. So, Jeb, let me know when you are ready to begin.
Okay, let's do it. Jonathan Jake Galt is an ex-Navy SEAL and former U.S. attorney currently in private practice with his sexually naive secretary, Ellen. He has a sexy relationship with a congressional staffer and girlfriend to eunuchs, Gina, and works up the block from a jazz club where he gets literally every meal. The club owner asks him to look into a spooky African roots music performer named Andre Lescaut, who bewitches her audience, but Lescaut ends up dead, and elderly black soft shoe man and drunk Shinbone Gates is the suspect. Jake takes the case and clears Shinbone with the testimony of Stud and Hugehead, and is seduced and filmed during sex by Mrs. Her name is legally not Joan Bennett Kennedy. He's nowhere close to solving the case, but the guilty co-conspirators keep vomiting clues and mistakes his way, culminating in a ritual by Lescaut's mother, a voodoo priestess, who uses the power of Ankhs to rotate her daughter's dead body and drive not Mrs. Ted Kennedy outdoors naked where she gets murdered by a Doberman. He also drives a Porsche.
Wow, you did it.
That's incredible.
Nobody ever gets this. That was really good. And also very descriptive. And I think it really gave people at home a good idea of just how fucking bananas this book is. It is crazy. Like, this is crazy town stuff here. And I mean, like, come, my lady, crazy levels of crazy town. Or was that tantric? I think it was crazy town.
It was crazy town. I have a question. I have actually not just one question. I have 3 big questions. And Jeb, you already hinted at one of them. But okay, question the first. Who is John Galt?
Jake Galt.
Okay, but it's Jonathan.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, even though Jake
is John Galt.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's come on. Even a Republican staffer should have more self-regard than that.
Right. I mean, he tries to hide it by adding the U in the Galt, like Willie Galt, the wide receiver. But, like, I mean, Is that you really fooling me? I've read Canadian and UK literature. I can drop that out and see what the word really means.
Yeah. Unless you live like somewhere in the Midwest where after the great North American vowel shift, he would have become John Galt. So, slightly different. But yeah, later on they start referring to him as Jake, but motherfucker Jake is a nickname for Jacob, and I shouldn't talk because Jay is not a nickname for Justin. But hey, anyway, yeah, his name is John Galt.
So my second question, and I thought we might leave this for a little bit later, but you nailed it so perfectly in Plot in 60 that I think it bears investigation. So this is an authentic thriller, if you will, set in the mean streets of Georgetown, Washington, the District of Columbia.
If you think we're going to let go of the authentic thing anytime soon, oh boy, you haven't been listening to the previous episodes of this show.
Yeah, you've never tried to fill time on a podcast, my friends. So this is the mean streets of Washington, D.C., and the plot is really driven by this senator's wife. And the senator is a young, rich, handsome go-getter who is but 34, but everybody already sees what is in his future. And it is at the very least a vice presidential nod and possibly an early presidential run. Now, our narrator, John Galt, thinks that this guy is a putz and that he's a, stuffed shirt devoid of substance, but admits that he's very, very good looking. And, Jeb, you had an idea about who this might be that I'd like you to go into. And then I want, Jay, did you have an idea? And then I have an idea.
So I felt it was that the character of Catherine Vane, the wife, is modeled heavily after Joan Bennett Kennedy, Ted Kennedy's wife, who was blonde, met him when she was very young, and it was reputed that they had a marriage essentially in name only. She bore him 3 children. Catherine Vane bore her husband 3 children. I don't know if I mentioned the blonde thing. They're both blonde. And also Joan Bennett Kennedy famously had a drinking problem. She passed out. She was found passed out on the streets of Boston at one point. So the alcoholism, the hair color, the 3 kids, the age thing is off by like a handful of years. Ted Kennedy was actually older, but this all fit because Howard Hunt was also one of Nixon's plumbers, and his task was to figure out how to rat fuck Ted Kennedy if he ran in 72. So, that was like, at some point he gets like fake mustaches and like some real like Clouseau-esque disguises and goes up to try to investigate Chappaquiddick and comes back with nothing. But he was the guy. He was the hatchet man from the Kennedys. And I think this is kind of like, well, I didn't get to do this in real life, so I'm going to fuck him in fiction.
Right.
So as far as my answer, I'm stupid and I know shit about shit. So I'm just going to agree with Jeb. Okay. Yeah, my knowledge of actual Watergate proceedings are pretty slim, but that sounds about right considering the way the character's portrayed.
And Jeb, that's an incredible and unsurprising level of detail, which means that you're right and my idea is wrong. But I'm going to say my idea anyway.
Go, yeah.
And in case we haven't made this clear enough, this is a book written by a former and disgraced Republican operative that explicitly portrays an up-and-coming, handsome, rich, Democratic senator from Pennsylvania as a swinger Satanist. We can't make this point clear enough. Like, that is the plot of this book, that the senator and his wife have been longtime swingers and Satanists. And then on page 154 of this 159-page tome, we have the following. Our hero, Jake Galt, is talking to former flunky of Billy Zane. No, sorry, Senator Vane. And his name is Ross Demler. And Galt just, withers him with this, because most every time Galt's talking to his enemy, I think it's safe to say he leaves him withered. Vane's confused now, vulnerable. Go back to him and write your own job description. but tell him this from me. He's to forget the White House, smother all attempts to get him the nomination, spontaneous or otherwise. As a grieving widower, he's got a perfectly plausible explanation. 3 children and doubled parental responsibilities. At which point I was like, holy shit, is this a Biden hatchet job?
I'm just saying, if Nixon had ended up running, I think a lot of what was in this book would have ended up as campaign material.
Oh, yeah.
Collision, when you started reading, when you said I thought you were going to say 124 instead of 154, because there's another bit where just like out of the blue, he's like, well, let me tell you how shallow I think these Kennedys are. He says,
yes.
He says, I tossed it away, reflecting that the Vanes were non-serious people who demanded to be taken seriously. His transparent ambition, their whole imperious lifestyle was preposterous. Vane was about as qualified to be president as I was to practice open heart surgery. Still, his staff employees, the swarms of pilot fish around them, and the dazzled core of youthful volunteers would convince him of his own indispensability, even if Vane's own chutzpah failed. But Vane was a facile politician. Once, so the story went, he was addressing a group whose makeup he wasn't entirely sure of. Someone in the audience asked, Senator, are you a Catholic? And Vane answered, not necessarily.
Oh. I mean, we do like crosses and stuff, but, the other way around.
Yeah, we like a certain level of pomp in our ritual. The occasional dead chicken will do no harm. So this is like an amazing hatchet job on the idea of handsome, young, faux progressives. And I don't know if I was reading it through the lens of today, or if it was all there. But this idea of like this sort of weird Pizzagate, Fox News, seething paranoia where every neighborhood you go to in a city bears unmistakable signs of integration and your political enemies are ascendant and you just know they're out there having that sexy sex and probably like making deals with the devil. How else could they get so famous when men of substance, jowly men who know what they're talking about, like you used to work for and do crimes for, are on the outs somehow?
Yeah.
I don't know. It just all seemed a little on the nose.
It did. I have a question for both of you. And I didn't notice this until about halfway through. I wish I would have noticed it earlier so I could keep count. But did either of you notice how obsessed this book is with Bushmills?
Yes. I didn't think there were street teams in 1972, but God bless them.
I mean, like he never orders a whiskey. Is Bushmills whiskey or scotch? I don't drink.
It's Protestant Irish whiskey.
Whiskey. Okay, yeah. I'm a tequila guy. Which is an embarrassing thing to say on a podcast. But anyway, he doesn't just order a whiskey on the rocks. It's always Bushmill. And this book is filled with phrases like I have excerpted in my quotes here. What was it? I ordered Bushmills over shaved ice and appreciated the smooth flavor. But
I have read significant amounts of content marketing that was more subtle than this shit is on the topic of Bushmills.
I think the word Bushmills is in this book more than any single character's name, and I really wish I would have started counting the first time. But by the time I noticed it, I was halfway through, and there's no way I was reading this thing twice. So, yeah.
How was this reading experience for you two?
Jeb?
I mean, like it was easily distracted and tough, but I got to plead 5-year-old on that. But I did catch even after he went to bed, I would kind of get through 5 pages and I would be like, well, I wonder if somebody's just motherfucked me on Twitter. No? Oh shit. Okay. I'll go back to reading this.
I'm completely alone in my apartment and I had the same experience. I made a pan of brownies last night. just to distract myself from reading this book. I cooked a fancy dinner. I had to go into the room that the computer is physically not, so I would stop checking Facebook and Twitter. This book, about every 5 or 6 pages, you just realize you're reading something so boring that it's impossible to pay attention to for a long period of time. Although it does pick up in the second half when things get magical. And that's, I was doing air quotes, you couldn't see it at home, because by magical, I mean extremely racist.
Wow. Yeah, it really takes it out in the open from the first half of the book, which is merely condescending and covertly racist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had the exact same problem, and I don't have a 5-year-old or any current Twitter beefs, but there were several times where I just got high-centered on a page in this book and was just like, I would literally read less than a word and feel my brain just nope out and desperately need to go do something else, which wouldn't have been that big a problem, except that it was like getting down to, I have an hour to finish this book and am completely booked between now and recording time. And I don't know what it is.
I don't know if I mentioned it on air, but I was up until 3 a.m. last night, just desperately trying to finish this book so we could record and I wouldn't have to pretend that I read the end when I actually didn't. But yeah, that rarely happens for me. Normally I can get through some shit. There's just something about this book that just makes you want to put it down. There's a blurb for you, by the way.
It's funny because I didn't have a chance to go double check these, like vet them, look at the end notes. But if you go to the Wikipedia on Hunt, like supposedly he was commissioned by the CIA at one point, sent to North Africa to write the American alternative to James Bond. Like, and you know, the CIA was not, this is basically like Ivy League clubhouse culture. They were not short of clandestine novelists and nonfiction writers. Like finding a literate guy in the CIA who actually was published wasn't very difficult. But this guy got the gig, and I was expecting something more propulsive or just, like, I don't know, like just better paced and with a better sense of like which details are important and which details are like you being a crank.
I mentioned a minute ago that I had 3 big questions, and I realized I never got to the third of them.
Oh.
So my third big question is, do you guys remember the X-Files?
Yeah.
Do you remember how the big bad, the cigarette smoking man in maybe the best standalone episode of the X-Files, turned out to be a failed pulp novelist who devoted the rest of his life to behind-the-scenes evil because nobody liked his books?
Yeah, I would like to read Take a Chance, a Jack Colquitt mystery, but I'm never going to get the opportunity. But yeah, no, I was wondering that a little looking at because I couldn't vet like the Hunt stuff. I never read a biography of him. I even contacted Dick_Nixon on Twitter, who's his real name is Justin Sharon. He's a really good playwright, but he's fascinated by Nixon and imitating his voice and has read everything. And he said like, yeah, there's a couple biographies, but like there's not really any point. The most interesting thing about this guy is like he lied about how awesome he was in the CIA and wrote bad books. But one of the things he
did
supposedly,
Chris Carter know.
Well, so one of the things he was supposedly, like allegedly part of was the Kennedy assassination. And so there are these other elements of the cigarette smoking man's career that model a little bit things that were claimed about Hunt's. But like, I honestly think that, what's his name? William B. Davis is probably a more credible JFK assassin than E. Howard Hunt was.
Well, let's get deep into this, guys. I think, everyone tuned in for us to talk about the Zapruder film for a little while. So, and after that, we'll go into a long digression about maybe, say, like a Black Flag album. And just keep everyone at home happy. But no, what I think what we should do now is roll on into high points, low points. So here's some music.
High points are high, and the points are low. High points, low points, get ready to go.
All right, high points, low points. It's exactly what it sounds like. We're going to talk about the high points of the book. We're going to talk about the low points of the book. Normally we go round robin. I think we're going to have to switch things up a little bit here.
And as we have a guest, Jeb, I insist you go first. Say something good about this book.
Okay, yeah, especially because I do want to apologize, too, for the previous section. Like, it was not my intention to pick a book that was going to be another, like, which Nixon staffer is writing which parallels about which politicians in real life he couldn't stand. Because, Jay, we need you to do that with On the Brink and fucking Ben Stein, who also had Ted Kennedy in it, where he was, like, fucking a 12-year-old, like, Catholic schoolgirl. Just, like, a really weird run here. Anyway, my high point, much like with the O'Reilly book and with On the Brink, is a sex scene.
All right.
Not the one you're thinking of. There's the prelude. It's just a passage, a prelude to the sex scene. And he writes, "She was dabbing her eyes with Kleenex. What a boff. One bare thigh rubbed the length of mine, and she inhaled deeply. The rising motion brought her breasts within 6 inches from my nose. And from the way they surged, I knew they were real. Both of them."
Both of them.
And I want to know, like, what fucked up shit he saw at the CIA that he was like, I got to specify that when I say that the breasts were real, I mean plural.
Neither of them contained laser cannons.
She was an either or.
He's like literally a millimeter from saying it felt like a bag of sand.
Yeah, there's some real Anchorman vibes happening with the way he describes sex. It's a little embarrassing. Collision, why don't you go next?
I would love to. So this moment isn't much in and of itself, but in context, it really made me smile. On around page 107, we get, "There had been 12 participants in the occult ceremony. With the priestess, that made 13 the number traditional for a witch's coven. If that's what it was. I would have discarded the idea, except for the publicized fact that occultism was proliferating around the world. The popularity of astrology and zodiac symbols was an open index to its spread. And there were practicing cults of witches in England, even on Park Avenue."
Oh,
and it goes
no.
on. And I just really enjoyed it because I, too, understand that sometimes when you're halfway through something, you want to stop and explain the premise of the thing that you're doing.
Yeah, and it's like the John Goodman intro in Matinee where he's previewing the movie Mant about the man-sized ant. He's like, and they've appeared in scientific magazines, and he just sort of waves them before the camera. It's like, well, when we were in CIA, we did a lot of research on what's going on with covens, and let me tell you, that research is gold.
It's all over the place. or you know, sort of like in Birdemic, other animals like seals. Which is the best line in cinematic history. So.
Look, I've seen some shit. When I was in the CIA, I was on the Coven detail. So
I saw some.
I'll have a Bushmills, please.
Yeah, I saw some fake boobs, and I saw the proliferation of all sorts of dark shit.
Now that we frame it like this, how do you write about a satanic senator as a former CIA operative and make it so fucking boring?
Right.
This should be the best thing ever. If Jack Ryan fought a voodoo priestess, that would be deeply problematic, but you could not put that book down.
Because the author, by his very nature, is a bureaucrat and not very interesting. I guess it's my turn to do a high point. So I guess this book takes a pretty radical turn about halfway through, where it goes from, just your standard, I would say, procedural investigation to suddenly there is Satanism. Suddenly Satanism. Must-watch TV, by the way. Way better than Suddenly Susan.
Veronica's Closet Coven?
Sabrina the Teenage... they already did that.
Damn.
So, yeah, for me, I think I was really surprised by the concept of turning the entire story on its head around halfway through. And I thought it was kind of a neat plot device that functioned as a very clumsy twist. And, it went from a very by-the-numbers kind of pseudo-noir book to a slightly more offensive version of Live and Let Die, which I found interesting, So I guess that's my first high point, is just the radical tonal shift. It's like a Nirvana song where they go from being real quiet to real loud. It was like that.
I'm glad that you mentioned the Live and Let Die thing. I was like, he had to have just ripped that off. And I looked, and this is actually published the year before, so points to Howard Hunt for anticipating Live and Let Die.
Points, I guess. Yeah.
So maybe he saw Dr. No. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so low points.
I guess
I really need
point.
to.
Do you not, Jay?
I really need to lead into low points, and I'm sorry to preempt everyone, but it's because it's directly related to my high point. And I know nothing's more fun than hearing someone on a podcast read directly from their notes, but I'm going to read a sentence directly from my notes under low points. In all caps, I am not drunk or high. I've not even been inhaling dangerous fumes. Why is the climax of this book so confusing? Because I need someone to explain the ending of this book to me like I was a child, like for real. All I know is that there's a jazz singer who dies in the beginning, and there's her mom who's a priestess of magic, and the singer is dead, and then a senator's wife that our hero's been doing it with calls them over to a secret ritual, and then Spirit kills them, except they're not really dead, and they get back up and run away, and then a guard dog does kill them both or only one. It's really confusing and it's really hard to follow. Jeb, your plot in 60 did a great job of clearing this up for me, so I don't think I actually do need it explained. But goddamn, on the page, and I was not willing to go back and reread any of this, folks. Don't worry, it's not like I do this professionally or anything. I came to the end of the book and was just like, well, that was weird. So, while I did appreciate, as I said earlier, the idea of turning the book on its head into something completely different, it went from boring to almost incomprehensible, which not a good quality for a book.
I think I had that problem too. I was like, how did he suddenly know all these things? And I think it's just because Hunt's such a bad writer that every time the investigation hits an impasse, he just has some angel of evidence show up and be like, let me just fuck something up so you can figure more out. So all of a sudden they need to get a recording of what's her name? Andre Lescaut. They need her audio from her set. So somebody's got to pick it up because his investigation is stalled. So then he gets to sit at the jazz club again and then wait to tail the guy.
Right. But the reason that big climactic scene doesn't make sense is twofold. One, because there's an explicitly withheld piece of information that is not only withheld through that scene, but is withheld through his first recounting of what happened and only divulged when he then redescribes the entire book at the very end to the journalist character, who is even one notch lamer than the village explainer character you get in a lot of shitty books. This is the character who needs the book explained to them.
Uh-huh.
And at the end of that scene, the journalist says, "Jiminy Willikers, I'd never be able to use this story, and that will haunt me forever. Thanks, Mr. Galt." Which, Jeb, as a journalist, I know that probably really hit you hard, so I'm sorry to mention that, because I'm sure that similar experiences you've had are your low point for this.
Yeah, there's actually a line on page 40 that says, "Despite a degree in journalism, Bill Pfaff was a good writer." And I was like, fuck you, buddy.
Oh.
Youch.
Owned by E. Howard Hunt.
Jeb,
that's the few, the proud.
How many times in your professional career have you said Jiminy Willikers?
Apart from that time I was trying to be a Fallout boy or whatever, not much.
Yeah. But the other thing that he slips by is at his second meeting with Madame Zilka, where we establish that this priestess is both a legit magician who can work real effects in the world and the mother of the murdered jazz singer. That scene ends with her dropping her offensively rendered accent having a conversation, and she says this as the scene fades out. What could I do to help? I spoke to her for a while and let myself out. Which is the cheapest plot device I think I have ever seen.
That's like...
Because it lets them off the hook for everything. So basically what it means is that big, confusing climactic sequence is just staged by Madame Zilka and John Galt for the express purpose of exposing the senator and the senator's wife. And the senator's wife getting accidentally killed by a vicious Doberman was just I think what E. Howard Hunt would probably call a happy accident right before being asked to leave the bar.
I know what I would call it. A dude mocking Jay. Sorry.
Yes!
Sorry. Okay, so low points. Let's go with Jeb next.
There are some bits... well, you kind of hit on this, Collision. Like, he throws in these transitions sometimes to kind of, I think, remind the reader that this is a noir, or to just sort of like catch you up. And, so we have journalist exposition, but we also have these bits that are just sort of like, they almost seem like he's writing reminders to himself. So we wind up on page 70 after he's been sapped in the head after, nailing the senator's wife while being videotaped on their like drinking porch or whatever. So he's back home and he's got a headache, and he says, one thing came through loud and clear. I was no closer than before to finding out who killed Andre Lescaut. And like, I'm sitting here going, I know, because I'm reading it.
Yeah, I've read you fail for 50 some odd pages. I know that you're not very good at your job. Oh, Collision, you're next.
Wow, how to pick just one. This is a minor thing, but twice within the first 70 pages, he does the move where he's deeply hungover and he shoves his face into ice and cold water. The second time is after, if I may borrow a locution, he's been boffing the senator's wife. Pause for laughter. And he wakes up, on the post-coital bed or the couch or whatever, and goes over to the bar and shoves his face into the ice well. And I was just deeply offended because, again, it's sub 70 pages and we've already seen this scene play out twice. And two, buddy, that's food ice. That's not face ice. And I just really found that kind of revolting, because you can kind of imagine the senator who, okay, fine, maybe he's a little pompous. Maybe he's not actually that woke. Maybe he even likes to have sex with people he's not married to. But that doesn't mean that when he comes down and like pours himself a drink, he needs fucking John Galt face schmutz in his ice. That's not cool.
And in my imagination, John Galt sweats a lot, and it's salty. So, yeah.
So it is summer in D.C., I believe, as the bulk of this book is happening. And Galt is exposed explicitly as a needs to shave his face twice a day man.
I can relate with that. Yeah, that is gross. I didn't really think about that.
It's a little gross. Jay, do you have another low point you'd like to share with the class?
Well, I mean, I think we've all already mentioned this book is pretty heavily racist in a kind of exoticized kind of way. There's a lot of African, quote-unquote, voodoo going on. But in addition to that, I wanted to mention the fact that the fat shaming in this book is also ridiculous, especially when you get into a character, the voodoo mama, as it were, who is not only black but fat. Like, I'm not going to get into it too much, but she is definitely described as quote-unquote obese, and the book takes every possible second to scold her for it, even when it's coming from her own mouth. She refers to her body as this disgusting thing you see me in, which really upset me a lot. Like, that's not even funny. Like, that's just an upsetting thing to read. So fuck that part of the book. And I feel pretty safe saying E. Howard Hunt, kind of a dick. There we go.
Huh. I believe history bears that assessment out.
So in addition to just the weird, like, almost speaking to the reader transitions, like the reminders, he just has really strange focus on exposition, and he suddenly, it's almost like he says, oh, you know, I haven't told anybody what this means for a while. So you have characters like girlfriend Gina sipping and saying moodily, now that we're away from Andre Lescaut, out of that atmosphere she projects, what do you think about it all? And then a few pages later, he describes Andre Lescaut as, she was a sensuous female, but in a highly controlled way. Hearing her, I got the impression that it was just a useful attribute, like her voice. I didn't feel she liked anything human. And then later, and this is like the weirdest exposition in the book to me, but like I think just sort of captures that. It says, Eldridge played a highly charged set, ending with a muted satin doll, accompanied only by Steve. For a lot of listeners, it was an emotional rendering that filled the place with nostalgia.
For a lot of listeners, except for me, I have no feelings. I'm a tough guy.
Was he panning around the room and doing like, well, that's nostalgic weeping. That's a nostalgic smile. That a lot of nostalgia on that guy.
I mean, I definitely later I want to get into the musical aspect of this book a lot, but I think I want to save it for when we're just going a little more freeform. But yeah, there's a lot to be said about the musical aspects of this book that are fucking hilarious. Anyway, back to low points.
But I also, Jeb, I think you're giving him too much credit. He's not looking around the room doing some kind of soft assessment. You have to remember, this is a DC operative. This is a proper lanyard man. He is presenting you with polling data. He went table to table with his fucking clipboard and asked people to assess themselves on a scale. He's giving us the latest numbers, man.
How nostalgic are you where 10 means strongly agree and 1 means disagree?
Do you think happy days are here again? Yes, no. Are you better off than you were one set of jazz ago?
You get a robocall 3 days after you leave the show that's like, does it mean a thing if it ain't got that swing? Yes or no?
Yeah. I think my next low point actually works pretty well with Jeb's because there is something magical about David St. John's lack of interest in what the reader might be interested in and clunky prose. Like there's a blend there that I'm not familiar with. On the second page of the book, we have not met this character at all. We get the following. My inner office was about 12 by 14, carpeted by the Canal Square building management, but not for me. The original lessee, a computer consultant, had been undercapitalized and ran out of money before moving in. So I got the sand-colored wall-to-wall and the walnut paneling with my lease. The books, furniture, Currier and Ives prints, and 3 modern oils were mine. Motherfucker, I don't even know who you are or why I should care. I really don't need your office's carpet's backstory.
But that's the authenticity.
That is true.
All right. Maybe so.
Like, do you just open a book and find out that some guy leases office space and just take their word for it? No. You demand that they prove that they've got a lease.
Look, dude.
Yeah, I need some evidence, counselor.
Yeah. Look, dude, it was never actually proven that he even owns an office. It's like Columbo, where you're not sure if he actually sleeps under his desk or not.
Is he even a cop? But there's one other, 7 pages later. Again, we barely know who this guy is. We are maybe 9 pages into this book's text at this point. The furniture was modern Scandinavian. Above built-in stereo components were shelves filled with law and reference books, novels, and art reproduction volumes. From France and Germany. A few non-representational paintings brightened other walls. plus my old Navy commission, and the photo mural of a nude Oriental girl left by the former tenant. Turning on the tape deck, and it's like, okay, buddy, like, go fuck yourself.
You are truly a man of the world. Like, Mr. Galt, I salute your taste and your exquisite diversity of interests.
You know, most of my art reproduction volumes are from Italy.
Yeah, well, you know, that's because you suck. Most of mine are from Japan and are actually comic books. Anyway.
All right.
All right, we need to put the top on the compliment sandwich here. So it's time for some high points. Jeb, how about you?
Well, Collision took mine, which was the publicized fact that occultism is real, because I just love that info dump. So just in general, I love every part of this book where E. Howard Hunt just goes into like brain force fact warrior mode, where he just lets you know that he knows a lot of shit. He's seen some books. He's seen some pictures from France and Germany. And but anyway, and there's one at the end where it's like he just has to let you know that he figured it out, even though you've watched him figure it out. He says, "At first, I couldn't believe she had supernatural powers, that they even existed. I reasoned that it was related to St. Elmo's fire. Then I theorized it came from ionizing some rare gas. Finally, that, plus other things I'd seen and felt, persuaded me." And you're like, you know, if a rock of cognition such as yourself can be bowled over by these circumstances, who am I to argue? It happened.
It's a good point. It's a really good point. And as the rock continues to roll downhill, I think it's a good time also for us to take a break. So let's go ahead and do that. Welcome back. It's the time of the show where we play games and or satanic rituals. Up first, I think as usual, we're going to start with the most authentic segment in podcasting history. This is Dramatic Readings.
Dramatic readings. We're gonna make it sound important. Dramatic readings. Yeah, I got some words for you.
All right, so this is going to take some work, fellas, because we need to take parts of this book and make them sound dramatic as we read them for the home audience. So let's go ahead and start with our guest.
Okay, so my favorite passage in this, and the most, I think, actually richest in terms of writing and worth reading, is when Hunt is basically like just getting out all his Nixon era law and order grievance at the counterculture. Because there's this bit, like, you know, to kind of underline what a great investigator he is, he goes and he interviews these guys for the first time. That's the only reason why this clue is found, is that nobody else looked for it, even though the cops knew these guys were there. But there's this sort of Stygian walk to the process to interview them.
Oh, God, I love that word.
It's also eldritch.
Yeah, it is. It's eldritch, Stygian, and makes me think of a dead old racist every time.
So he writes, "Once a street for young marrieds with vertical mobility, harmless, classically inclined fairies and do-good spinsters, Dover Place was now a series of pads, halfway houses, and small communes. In its rooms you could buy or sell narcotics, fence or order stolen merchandise, find a lover of any sex, shoot horse, play guitar, blow your mind on acid, paint posters, film a porno movie, chant Hare Krishna, die, or dream your life away. What you couldn't find was a front stoop clear of trash, bottles, and beer cans. Number 15 was no exception." And he goes on to describe like how hideous this is, but I'll kind of skip this because it goes on quite a bit. It says, peeling pink paint, sagging steps that suggested active termites, and window glass obscured with finger paintings, day-glow posters and scrawls instructing passersby to undertake unnatural connection with the president and murder a pig a day, about average for the humanistic lifestyle within. And then he finally confronts our friends here. Sorry, hang on a second. So he finally confronts the witnesses that police have told him about, and he says, "Steps came down the stairs, and from the doorway at my level there peered a tall, skinny youth with an extraordinarily large head. His red hair was frizzed. He wore a necklace, paint-stained shirt, bell-bottom jeans, and no shoes on his feet. Peace." He saluted me with the V sign. "Pax vobiscum." "Fuzz?" I shook my head. "I'd like a word with you, if you're huge head and stud." "What's the scene?" "Murder."
What were those names again?
Huge head and stud.
All right, so those who have listened...
Slam pig and big dude.
Those who have listened to Those Who Trespass episode will know that there was a very evil character in that book, also affiliated with the underworld culture, named Bobo.
No, Robo.
Robo, sorry, not Bobo.
Like the Tussin.
Yeah, you're right. Like or the breakdancer. Yeah, but I think this is just a weird coincidence that we're back to horrible nicknames written by old men who have absolutely no idea about the culture they're writing about. In yet another episode that you're on, huge head, really? And if I could interrupt a little bit, I like that he just kind of jammed everything he knew about hippie culture into one list, whether it be good or bad. He's like, this is a place where you could shoot junk, take acid, kill people, or play guitar.
I mean, I don't remember if it was that one because I kind of blacked out during that section. But the other time he's walking through town and freaking out about what he sees, I was struck by two things, maybe three things. One, wow, there's a lot of casual slurs in this book. Mm-hmm. Two, he's deeply upset by people being outside and locks his door while leaving for the walk to protect against what he calls foraging junkies, which led me to write the following note, Jesus, period. The other thing is, at one point, he describes the windows with crow's feet in them, or chicken feet or something, and it took me a while to realize, oh, you would need a disparaging way to refer to peace signs.
Oh, shit. I didn't even... I was thinking of, like, those metal gates that... or, like, metal bars that have the three kind of curly pieces at the top and the bottom. But you're totally right. Yeah, he means peace signs. All right, I guess I'll go next here. I'm going to deviate a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit of dramatic reading, but I'm also going to do a little bit of dramatic rapping, and you'll see why very soon.
Okay, Common.
Did you know he was talking about hip-hop the whole time and not a woman? All right, so... I touched the dead man's hand, still warm, but not as warm as mine. I lifted his forearm and the elbow flexed without stiffness. I could move an eyelid and the jaw muscles were still slack. All this I did out of habit because 3 hours ago I had seen him disappear up the drive and onto the grounds of the old house. 3 hours ago, he was still alive. Talk, man, Bernie grated. Rap. Turning, I looked back at him. What was the gun? He gestured at the floor beside the dead man's hand. Who said he didn't kill himself? What the hell would he do that for? Why did you pick up the gun and get your prints on it if they weren't there before? His eyes narrowed, no frame, he spat. Not this, brother, you done it, not me. I shrugged. Think it could be proved? What's his name? Bernie, the drummer stared at me. I knelt and ran my left hand across the dead man's chest into the inner breast pocket. With 2 fingers, I drew out a billfold that was thin and relatively new. I covered my left hand with a handkerchief and transferred the wallet into it. Then I opened it and took out what greenbacks it contained, a 20, 2 10s, and 3 1s. Laying them on the floor, I said, keep it for your trouble. Word.
Yeah!
You know how hard it is to try to rap something with absolutely no rhythm, no meter at all. I read the word rap and it jumped out to me in this book, and I know, in the 70s, well, probably not in the 70s, more in the 60s, people would just say rap to mean talk, but yeah, just as soon as I saw the word rap, I knew what I had to do, and it was inflict that upon you,
I like
our
that
listeners.
You got a rhyme in there. I liked it.
I managed to find the one rhyming couplet I could create, and that was all extemporaneous, by the way. So if you want to get me on a feature, email the show. 16 bars, $350. Well, I'll make it happen. Collision.
Fast turnaround.
Yeah.
Topics to be debated.
I will rap about anything but Nintendo games or Star Wars.
I'm taking $350 out of the show fund and making you rap about Star Trek then. Loophole!
I absolutely would rap about Star Trek, no problem. But most of it would probably be about Counselor Troy.
Oh.
I'm a Troy boy, they say, as the kids like to call it.
Welcome back to the Barkley Chat.
I just had a picture of you. What?
Welcome back to Barkley Chat.
Oh, you mean broccoli? So I struggled with how to pick this. We had some conversations off air about it. And I was eventually talked off reading the several pages of just seething rage that, quote, the local residents of Senator and Mrs. Vane, the well-publicized defenders of the dispossessed, was in fact a nice house. You think I'm kidding that this seething rage went on for several pages, but no, I'm not. But I was talked off of reading that and talked on to reading something that's a little more apropos, which is, of course, the scene where our narrator and the senator's wife have the sexity sex.
You might even say they do it.
Yeah, I'm glad we talked you off.
Yeah, they do it. So I'm going to jump around a little bit, but not as much as young Mrs. Vane will in a minute, fellas. Wink. And ladies. Wink. And others. Wink. Because you desperately need to hear how she's introduced. And, Jay, if you want to edit in a record scratch noise at the appropriate moment, feel free.
No, I'm totally going with House of Pain's Jump Around. But...
Young Mrs. Vane was wearing a jet-black wig that made her light skin glow in contrast. Her nose was small, and her mouth somewhat large. Mind-blowing indigo hot pants barely concealed her delta as she flexed the knee of one long and lovely leg. Handmade thong sandals and a sleeveless jersey blouse splashed with tie-dye colors. I had seen 100 magazine and newspaper photographs of her, cutting ribbons, first knighting, fox hunting at Warrenton, and empathizing with palsied kids. But none of the photos did her justice. I forgot my quarrel with the width of her mouth, for she was an absolute beauty. All this I absorbed during the few seconds it took her to lift one arm and beckon lazily at me. "Do come in, Jake Galt. Here's your glass. I'm sure we're all going to be good friends before the day is over." I'm gonna skip ahead a few pages.
You're gonna skip the part where he pours himself some Bushmills, which literally does happen in that scene. But that's okay. I understand.
There's, I think, 3 separate times he pours himself a double of Bushmills. But I want to skip through the part where he's bantering with her and the flunky Ross Demler that includes like a page and a half about the trials and travails of trying to pronounce the word perspicacious while intoxicated. Hilarious. And I'm gonna get to the more sexy sex parts.
Oh, please, because these are hot.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Don't ask so many questions, love. Her tongue was a warm little caterpillar seeking a warm nest in my ear. Or cocoon.
You're just
That's why
you're
I'm
just
here.
gonna have to keep reading over my sounds of disgust because I'll edit them out later, maybe. But it's impossible for me to hear this without cringing audibly.
I feel you. Don't ask so many questions, love. That's why I'm here. Oh, balls, she said wearily, and the caterpillar went away as she lay back and stared at me. My husband digs attractive young women who are artistic. He likes them for who they are and to be seen with. It bolsters the vain image. Holy shit, I just got that. Their name is Vain.
Yep.
They're vain.
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah, but it's spelled differently, so clever.
Yeah, but I just got that. And it's like their politics are swaying in the breeze.
And his first name is New Bold. So you could also say it's a weather vane. He's the new bold weather vane.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I thought I couldn't like this book less. Every now and then, I come across a suitable candidate, discreet enough to give newbie what he needs without a lot of tiresome romantic illusions. As for Andre, Ross got Blues Alley to hire her, then took newbie to see her. We thought it might click. It might have too, only... Her face became thoughtful. Only what? She got killed. I grunted, picked up the nearest glass, and drained it. Oh. Well, hell, if that's all there was, why all the mystery? I groped for her glass, found it, and pulled her head up enough so that she could get it down. Swallowing, she studied my face. Not the sort of thing one wants publicized, especially my involvement. Bottoms up. She tilted the glass and emptied it into her mouth. Not a spasm, and it was neat liquor. But then, whiskey was an old pal to this swinger. Maybe you'd better make a couple more. Good idea. I wandered off in the general direction of the bar, almost impaled myself on a pair of gnarled driftwood points, and poured from the nearest bottle. At this point, her taste buds were probably as dead as mine. I didn't bother with Cyrano's cracked ice. It was there in the service well. I knew it was there because I could see it where Demler had lifted the lid ajar.
I knew
but
it.
I didn't want to dive for it.
I knew it was there because I could see it. Sorry.
Are you being deposed, motherfucker?
Wait, roll that back. Tell me about your lease again.
The ice had once been water, I surmised. Probably some kind of cooling device had been employed to freeze it solid. The glasses were highball size, each better than half filled. I peered across the lush room at the doorway where I entered and Demler exited. I made it most of the way without spilling a great deal of liquor, closed the damn door, and bolted it. Then I staggered back to the big lounge where I'd left her. She was there, all right, but her pants weren't. Neither was the loud jersey. One was on the floor, the other flung across the back of a distant chair. Slim hips and tapered thighs, and only a hint of last winter's Hobe Sound tan. I sat down, handed her one glass, and pulled off her sandals. What for? She complained. There's brass tacks all over them. Who needs tacks in the back? Look at my tummy. 3 kids, and feel this. Her hand flattened mine and guided it over her abdomen. Harder, she insisted. How about that? Bet you don't weigh a pound over your Brearley graduation weight. How'd you know? You're that type. I gulped down an ounce of something alcoholic and framed her face with my hands. Then I kissed her lips. Groovy. Here's more. I gave her quite a bit more of the same. Finally, her chin went up and her eyes opened wide. What are you thinking? That's a nice appendectomy, and you're not a natural brunette. In school, did they call you Blondie? That was the least of it. I kissed her again. Are we playing it cool, baby? Too damn cool. On the pill? Always. And you're thoughtful to ask. Her knees drew up and she shivered. I stroked her flanks. Hey, I'm no mare. Care for a little booze? No, not now. Her face was getting strained, her words clipped with urgency. Her hands were clenched, the knuckles bone white. When? Later, damn you! Her arms circled me and my elbows gave way. Then her lips and tongue went everywhere, licking my face, rasping my ears, my nostrils, thrusting into my mouth as she writhed beneath me. Sounds in her throat were guttural, feral. The pitch of her voice rose. I was with her now. Very much with her. Oh, Jake. Oh, you bastard, you brutal goddamn woman killer. You don't know what this does to me. Oh, for God's sake, yes. Now, you son of a bitch. Come on, hurry. Ah.
Okay, so I think we
Drifting
know
off
what
to sleep.
E. Howard Hunt is into.
What is that?
Dirty talk.
Oh! Drifting off to sleep, I found myself reflecting that if she had a big mouth, she damn well knew how to use it.
See?
I can't believe you left out to me, the foreplay for that scene. I'm just going to read 3 lines. I'm not going to read the whole page, but 3 lines. The foreplay to this is what makes it for me. I bent over and she thrust upward to meet me. Her mouth was open and her breath hot. Against my shirt, her nipples burned like embers. Like, if you've experienced a burning nipple, I feel like you can just stop and call the doctor. I don't.
Yeah, that's not.
The burning nipple technique was actually my favorite combat move in the G Gundam series.
But then, like, just a few lines down, she put out her tongue, and I touched its tip with mine. And then a few lines below that, I murmured and managed to avoid her tongue long enough to butterfly her eyelids. She shivered. That's nice. So that, combined with what you read, makes me like, this is very much like an 8-year-old's idea of what happens in sex. Like, well, you touch tongue tips and then you butterfly kiss and then you just talk at each other.
Yeah. But you're with each other.
So we've gotten dramatic, we've gotten raptacular, and we've gotten sexy as hell. So I think it's time to move on to the next segment. We're running very long, so let's just do one more game, because I think we have a few more things to talk about after that. And this is the new favorite of the kids across the nation. It's If This Were a Song.
The sound just has some words, but not a melody and no rhythm at all. It's playing out with me, so we read all along. But it's probably wrong, it got us think about what if this were a song. What would it sound like?
All right, so every book has an essence. And I think that essence can usually be summed up by comparing it to a medium that we already talk about way too much, according to half of Twitter, which is music. And so we're going to figure out if this book was a song, if this book were a song, I believe is grammatically correct, because I do a book podcast. Let's talk about which one it would be. Jeb, why don't you go first?
I just started writing ideas, and I wound up with like a bulleted list. They're very short. Please feel free to argue with them. This is every white rock song about voodoo.
Yeah, yep, definitely.
This book is a song about how you got a onesie for your voodoo child that was too small, and you'd like to make a slight return after 30 days and without your receipt. This is a ballad about George Thorogood taking the tour at Marie Laveau's. This book is the text of the audio tour of Jimmy Page's house. And if Billy Crystal's jazzman black voice caricature from Comic Relief wrote an opera, this book would be the libretto.
Oh, wow. Those were all killer. I am nowhere near as prepared. But I'll go first. I do have to say I have mine divided into halves because I feel like this book is divided into halves. And the first half is definitely They Might Be Giants. She was a hotel detective. Because it strikes me as kind of the same balance of a very, somewhat mild-mannered fellow trying to write real tough lyrics. The difference is They Might Be Giants were trying to be funny. And the second half, kind of to echo something you just said, Jeb, I have Voodoo Lady by Ween. So there you go.
We've got a pretty good spread here this time because, like, what really struck me about this book was Hunt's character, Galt, is hedonistic. His girlfriend is the fiancée of someone else. He sleeps with the senator's wife. He certainly makes, I think, a few passes at other people and thinks, God, if my secretary overheard my phone calls, she'd sure get a sensual awakening. But it's kind of a very grim kind of hedonism, and it's certainly not any kind of liberatory hedonism. It's just sort of, going through this mechanized, rote sex having for no good reason. It's also extremely self-aggrandizing and is telling a story you know something about, but is telling a very specific version of it that paints the teller in a better light than you might think of that teller in. And it might very well include the phrase, I'd say we kicked some ass.
Oh.
So if this book were a song, it would be Kickstart My Heart by Motley Crue.
That's my favorite part of that song. He's just like, years gone by, they say we kick some ass. And then when I'm enraged and on the stage, adrenaline rushing through my veins, I'd say we're still kicking ass. But, yeah, dude, you're the only one saying it. At this point, I've seen the YouTube videos. Yeah, so that's pretty much the end of the game segment. But I feel like we probably have some wrapping up to do. And I'd like to start by talking about Blues Alley, because we barely got a chance to talk about Blues Alley. Now, I've never been to D.C. Have either of you?
Yeah, a couple times.
Yeah.
Is Blues Alley a real place?
Not that I know of.
Okay, I did not think so, which is good, because, usually when people make the joke, oh, that would be a great band name, it's never actually accurate or funny. I think Blues Alley actually would be a great band name, but, for the type of group that's, four white guys who play, Aerosmith's bluesier covers at a restaurant where you get 25-cent wings on Sundays and pitchers of Busch for $3. I think it really works for that type of band. So Blues Alley, great band name if you're, going through your midlife crisis.
Yeah, you totally, if you're playing in the garage with 8 other guys who have erectile dysfunction too.
Exactly. And I also just wanted to point out too that Blues Alley, a lot of Bushmills gets consumed at Blues Alley.
Yeah.
And the version of Blues Alley after they've discovered the little diamond pill is, of course, Blues Hammer.
Do you like the blues? But yeah, a lot of Bushmills gets consumed there, and I would like to say that the type of people who hang out in places called Blues Alley do not drink Bushmills. They're dads in Guy Fieri shades, who order shit like a special called the Donkey Show. That's like a Tecate and a shot of Cuervo. just throwing that out there. Anyway, I had to get that off my chest because the Blues Alley stuff was just it's hilarious to me.
I worry that you're confusing Washington, D.C., our beloved nation's esteemed capital, and New Orleans, our beloved nation's most recently stomped by the planet cultural capital. But it seems fine either way.
I feel like any city with a Blues Alley is going to have those characteristics as long as you remain within Blues Alley. I'm just saying.
And when you go down Blues Alley, you might run into old Blue Sally, and if you do, give her my regards.
Nice.
That's my intro to the last song, which is inevitably House of the Rising Sun.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, we're going to play one original and then take a break. Tip your bartenders, and we'll be back in about 25 minutes. Now, I'm sure both of you have other things that you'd like to kind of circle back around and talk about. So let's do so.
Collision, you were telling me about his expertise you wanted to talk about.
I was actually lightly charmed by this, and I know that makes me an extraordinarily bad person, but one of the things that's notable about Jake Galt here is that he is every kind of lawyer. And if you're waiting for me to do a version of I'm Every Woman but rewritten into I'm Every Lawyer, well, wait no more, because we've got a Patreon and it'll be up soon. But he's every kind of lawyer at once. He works with insurance companies. He's executing a couple of multinational mergers, so apparently he's an expert in international law as well. He defends Shinbone Grimes, or whatever his name is, at some point in court, so he's a trial attorney as well. And I will put up with a lot for the sake of getting a story across, but I do kind of draw a line when the story is, in fact, about a surprisingly handsome and sexually successful version of the author, about whom you might expect the sentence to be something like, I quit boffing my beautiful, undemanding girlfriend and went outside to drive my Porsche to solve a murder by one of my political enemies while listening to jazz on the expensive tape deck.
That's almost a direct quote.
That's almost a direct quote.
We shit you not.
Just on the subject of expertise, I think it was impossible for Hunt not to just, declare himself a brain genius. But if you ever want to read about the CIA, I recommend there's a really fun narrative history. It's quite good, called Legacy of Ashes. And I decided I would go see what the book had to say about Hunt, because I didn't remember. He is described by the author as relentlessly mediocre. And then...
good.
Which is, the CIA, if you based it on its track record, we need to defund and just get rid of that shit immediately, because it has been a staggering failure at every step of the way. But anyway, he has a quote about Hunt from Ambassador Sam Hart, who met him in the late 1950s in, I think, Uruguay. But he says, Everett Howard Hunt Jr. was a unique character, totally self-absorbed, totally amoral, and a danger to himself and anybody around him. As far as I could tell, Howard went from one disaster to another, rising higher and higher. He's if you look at his track record, he's everywhere there's a mistake. He's, one of our heroes at the Bay of Pigs. The only thing he does right is the overflow. The only thing he does right is the overthrow of our Benz in Guatemala, which is basically as close to just an out and out crime against humanity as we've done. It's just unforgivable. Motivated in part by shit like propaganda films called Why the Kremlin Hates Bananas. For real. The most famous thing this guy ever did was fuck up a third-rate burglary. That's his top line on his obit, was not being able to execute a clandestine incursion into a hotel or a complex.
Yeah, didn't he get caught by a literal security guard?
Right, yes. Because they idiotically left the tape on the door on the automatically locking door there.
Yeah.
So the guy sees it, knows something is up, and then he catches all these Cuban like ex-CIA creep guys and Hunt and I think McCord, right? And they're just sort of standing there like, how you doing? Like doing like a Letterman bit, like, hey, you got any gum?
We just came in to check the thread count. It's no big deal.
It's incredible too, because from the second you started and introduced him as, what was it, relentlessly mediocre,
yep.
I had unbidden a vision of that moment in Ed Wood where Johnny Depp is on the phone asking, did you watch my movie? And you only get his side of the conversation. And he's, worst thing you ever saw, huh? Well, my next one will be better. And I just had this image of Howard Hunt being like, relentlessly mediocre. So you admit I didn't quit. You admire my stick-to-itiveness.
See, I told you I wasn't awful.
Yeah, he's, and I kind of like him as the Ed Wood of American right-wing politics.
All right, Collision, anything else?
I mean, we could talk about slightly more. I don't think we've mentioned on air that this book has the worst first sentence we have read in a minute. Like, this book takes, Jim Butcher out back behind the woodshed and shows him how bad writing kicks off. So I'm just going to read you that first sentence, which I will admit elicited an audible groan from yours truly. The sound of my door closing on the day's last client was no louder than a detonating grenade.
Ugh.
Waka fucking waka.
Yeah. No louder.
Like,
it's also really confusing, like, phrasing if you're just trying to insinuate that you slammed the door really hard. It didn't really click with me until I heard you read it. That's what he meant.
Yeah. And I do just want to call out that he repeatedly describes Andre Lescrow, or I forgot her name, as singing in, quote, African, which
right.
puts me in mind of the old blog, Africa is a Country,
yeah.
which is, I think, uniquely telling because the CIA is supposed to know stuff about other countries. Like, for example, the difference between a country and a continent and languages being spoken on places by people. So that was just repeatedly just a clanging note of hostile, willful ignorance that I personally, I'm just going to say it, fellas, I didn't care for it.
Yep, I agree. And I think on that note, let's go ahead. One more break. We'll come back. We'll talk about things we actually liked. Because I feel like I desperately need that now. So, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We're finished talking about the Coven. We're moving now into the final section, which begins with recommendations, things we liked more than this, which really isn't hard, because most books I could read more than 6 pages of at a time. Here's a little music for you.
Not only venom and spite, sometimes with sweetness and light, and we always end the episode by telling you about a thing we like. Recommendations.
So in this section, we like to expose people to things they may or may have not already read or watched or interacted with that they might possibly enjoy, instead of things that they will throw across the room in a fit of anger. Jeb, would you like to start us out?
Sure. I've kind of been steering into the skid with my pandemic reading. Like right when the panic started, I read The Great Influenza. And then once we all had to be locked in, I was like, well, I'm anxiety about staying inside. I'll read Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi, which is probably not something I would recommend to other people, but it worked for me. But now also that we're talking so much about police misconduct, I kind of got off the, I'd been waiting to do it for a long time. I finally started reading James Ellroy's L.A. Quartet, which if you've seen L.A. Confidential, you've seen an adaptation of one of those books. It's obviously like, if you don't like problematic language and problematic attitudes, obviously don't read it, because basically each one of these is one or two detectives who actually have some credible ability at doing public service, surrounded by malicious incompetence and race hatred. But you can also pair that with, there's a nonfiction book, L.A. Noir, by a guy named Buntin, Buntin, The Struggle for the Soul of America's Most Seductive City, I think. And they're just sort of a nice complement to each other if you want to do the fiction and the nonfiction. Also, if you're going to watch Perry Mason on HBO, these might be like kind of a more detailed entree to some of the things that you're going to see kind of like brought up and develop in that show.
Cool. Collision.
Yeah, so I think like Jeb, I'm sort of steering into the skid of our current moment. So I'd like to recommend a book by a failed political operative that posits that his enemies are in power and are literal, baby-eating satanic swingers. That book is The Coven by... No, I'm sorry. That wasn't even a joke worth attempting. I was late to this, and I regret it, but I just watched Jennifer's Body, which is a movie by Karen Kusama and some frequent collaborators of hers. At the time, largely because it starred Megan Fox and came out in roughly 2009, it was taken to be kind of a failed attempt to make a sexy vampiress movie in high school. However, what it actually is an interesting and disturbing meditation on adolescent friendship, adolescent sexuality, and the problems of being a lady-type person in a shitty world. And it's surprisingly good, and I really actually enjoyed it. And in fact, I wouldn't call it surprisingly good. I would just call it good. I very much enjoyed it. It does have perhaps one too many Diablo Codyisms in the dialogue, but all the actors actually get through them wonderfully. And again, I think it's underrated, and the director is certainly very welcome in my neighborhood as the director of Destroyer and some other stuff. And basically, it's a really solid reimagining, I would say, of oh shit! I just lost the movie Fright Night, where it's sort of like, what if vampirism, but in a all too real, not quite adult world, and I liked it a lot.
Cool. So I'm kind of sticking with a theme here, and I'm going to recommend a mystery because I read a lot of mysteries, but this one's surprisingly not Japanese. This, however, was translated from Italian. It's written by, I'm going to mangle this, I'm sorry, I'm not great with Italian, but Augusto de Angelis, I believe. That's spelled Angelis. And it's called The Hotel of the Three Roses. And if you like kind of the classic parlor room, locked room mystery, it's really, really good. It's basically about a murder that happens in a very seedy hotel. And the characters essentially are locked in, as our sleuth has to figure out who did it and why. And it's very much based on a very classic plot device, but it's really well written. And what I especially enjoy about it is absolutely none of the characters in it are likable at all. And that sounds weird, but I don't know how to describe it. It just makes it a lot of fun to read. So yeah, Hotel of the Three Roses. I think Pushkin Vertigo put it out. They do incredible stuff when it comes to translating non-English mystery novels, and I think you should read it. Moving on, sometimes people write to us, and sometimes we answer them, and then you all get to hear this song that apparently your kids like.
A, letter B, letter C, letter D, letter E, letter F, letter G, letter. Got a lot of letters.
We've gotten so many tweets and Facebook posts about, like, my son sings the letter song all the time, so apparently I need to just stop trying to do music for adults and go, like, I don't know, full Raffi. But that's a topic for a whole nother story. Let's read some letters, or a letter.
Sometimes letters are back in song form. And we got one that goes a little something like this. Subject line, how can you tell if a song is good? And it is from L. Allen. Gents, you talk about music a lot and frequently explain which bands are good, punk, emo, and hardcore bands I haven't heard of, metal acts I have, and which are bad, golden earring. So, I have a pretty basic question. How can you tell if a song or band is good? I think it has to be more complicated than are they pleasant to listen to, or else eminently beltable acts like Andrew WK would be regarded as musical gods instead of kind of fun novelty acts. Thanks for your help.
I hate this question, and nothing personal against the person who wrote it in, but you could tell if a band is good if you like them. There you go.
Yeah, but I mean, if you like them and they have swastikas on their albums, then that's not good.
Yeah, that's
bad.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, I mean, I would say if you enjoy their music, they're not horrible people doing horrible things or writing horrible lyrics, and they're not Led Zeppelin, then you're good to go.
Jay, at least, is not dazed and confused on this question. Jeb, what have you got?
Man, I don't know. Like, I essentially, my answer would be Jay's. Like, I wasted, years of my life not listening to music that I thought was going to, engender scorn from, the kids I went to school with. Like, it probably helps if, like, you're a latchkey kid who moves constantly and you're always the new kid and just getting the shit kicked out of you constantly to be that, like, anxious about it. But like being afraid to listen to Billy Joel because like, oh, Billy Joel's going to make you a wuss. Like, no, I mean, like, listen to what you like as long as it's not, endorsing something that actually makes other people feel worse. Like, I don't really care, but I don't know. For me, like if you were to say like, what is the triggering sort of sensation when I know a song is good? It's almost like it reminds me of something I haven't heard yet. But like there's a sort of instant familiarity, maybe because it's like falling into certain genres or tropes I already enjoy. But like it just it hits and you're like, this is this groove, whatever it is, this riff, this beat. Like I already felt this. Somebody's expressing it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I think generally too. What happens a lot is when groups of people get together and they talk about music. Frequently, they're similar types of people with similar tastes. So you're going to hear people go, this band is good, this band is bad, rather unanimously. That does not necessarily mean that's the truth. I'm reminded, of course, of the fabulous Sharp-Legged Worcester routine, Rock Rotten Rule, where a man calls in and, as a joke, this is John Worcester on the phone, says that he's written a book with every band that's ever existed, and whether they rock, whether they rot, or whether they rule. And it's all played as a joke because music is art. Art is subjective. Like, there's really no way to know. I would say one thing is, actually, that's not even true. I was going to say relative proficiency on their instruments, but one of my favorite bands is the Shags, and they can barely play. So, yeah, I don't know. If you like it, I think it's good.
I have a two-part answer. The first part is, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening to what either of you were saying, because what was going through my head was, oh, well, never have I ever met a cat like the magical Mr. Mephistopheles. So, like, I really like cats, so, you know, what the fuck are you asking me for? Yeah. That's a category error. Pun not intended. I will say that I do differ slightly from you two. I do think that there's a slight difference between good and I like it. And I think it's fun and interesting to think about that. I think it's not fun or interesting to argue about it or to try to insist that, you know, your particular slice of that is better than somebody else's. Like you two, though, I would say when I'm trying to assess whether something is good, that's more of an intellectual question, and I find myself asking questions like, is it clear what they were trying to do, and can I assess how close did they come to succeeding in that? And that's helpful. And then, is it new? Is it novel? Is it unexpected? Those things get toward creativity, and I can kind of appreciate those as well. But when it comes to, do I like it, that's not something I have to sit and reflect on very often. That's a much more visceral, instinctive reaction. And I think mostly as a kid who grew up listening to AC/DC, the difference between good and I like it is extremely obvious to me. Like, I like AC/DC a lot. I don't think that they are particularly good other than in fairly limited capacities. So, anyway, I hope that this was food for thought for you, Elle. And, whatever you like and whatever you think is good, just enjoy it and don't be a jerk about it.
Yeah, and especially don't do what I did throughout my teenage years, which is if somebody likes something that you don't like, start pointing out all the flaws in it, because that's really annoying. However, it's fun as hell on a podcast once you're in your 40s.
Waka waka. I will also maybe sort of sadly point out that it's okay to like stuff. It's not okay to be a giant jerk about it, and it's definitely not okay to be a jerk to the new kid in school. And I, while being a very, very old man, still fight with the idea that, like, how could it be good if it's popular?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's probably something all three of us can agree with, is if you grew up as kind of an outcast, definitely something that is as popular with the cool kids, you might write off, and trust me, that feeling never goes away. Like, if a song is on the radio many times a day, there's a really good chance I'm going to assume it sucks. And then later on, like 3 or 4 years later, be like, oh, hey, that song, that was actually really good.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a complicated issue.
My senior year in high school, where the same football players who had shoved me face first into closed locker doors 3 years before for liking Metallica, were ardently debating which of the numbers of the songs on their CD player. They didn't even know the titles, you guys. They were like, I like number 3, but you like number 4. It was just, I realized at that moment, culture wasn't for me.
I do want to reiterate, too, while I said I hate the question, it's mostly because it's something that I've been asked frequently, and I never have a good answer for. So I don't want to say that I'm coming off overly aggressive towards the letter writer, I hope. It's just the question itself kind of refers to that hive mind mentality about music, which I really think should be reserved for music critics who don't enjoy anything. So, yeah.
That's pretty fair. Okay, let's end it on a high note. I will audible into a new question. Let's leave it on a high note. Let's each of us name the last newish to us song we heard that we were like, wow, this is good. Like the last fun new discovery.
I'll go first. And we're going to get mail about this because people are going to be like, Jay's a fucking dork. But it's Girls in the Hood by Megan Thee Stallion. She's just an incredibly entertaining rapper. The beat goes really hard. It's based on Boys in the Hood. And she's also, like, most of her lyrics are kind of turning a lot of your preconceptions on their head when it comes to, the sexual dynamics in rap music. She's very, very domineering and aggressive sexually. And it's fun to listen to. Make sure if you're around kids, to have your headphones in. But yeah, that just came out like 3 days ago, or by the time this is out, 10 days ago. So yeah.
Okay, so there is a punk band from Sacramento called Destroy Boys, and they have a song entitled "I Threw Glass at My Friend's Eyes and Now I'm on Probation." And the song is a delight, and the title is the best title for anything I think I've ever encountered.
Along those lines, so I had like kind of a tie because I found them right around the same time, and one is actually much older. So, but there's a band, an Irish kind of experimental punk band called Fight Like Apes, and they have a wonderful song called "I'm Beginning to Suspect That You Prefer Beverly Hills 90210 to Me." But the song that I heard and it like clicked and I was like, this is fucking great, was a song by a band called Pickwick, which is a kind of like neo soul funk group out of Seattle, and the song is called Turncoat, and it's just filthy. But if like you like that kind of like classic dirty funk kind of vibe, it's just there's like 3 different hooks in it, and they're all great.
Nice.
Cool. So that was nice and positive. Jeb, thank you so much for being on the show. If people want to keep up with what you're doing, how would they find you, and what are you doing?
Okay, so yeah, first of all, thank you for having me back, because this is, hands down, like one of my favorite podcasts, and like this is what I listen to every time I go out to mow the lawn. That's my little reward. I got to do, toil under the Florida sun, so at least I get to listen to this. I mentioned earlier that book, L.A. Noire. I actually heard that on an episode of The Blotter Presents, which I've guested on a lot, and it's basically like new true crime. Is it something that you should check out? And the host is Sarah D. Bunting. She was one of the co-founders of Television Without Pity. She also is one of the co-hosts of the Extra Hot Great podcast, and she recently asked me to join her for the 2nd season of her podcast, Quaid in Full, in which we watch every Dennis Quaid movie and review.
Oh, wow.
So if you like, and that could be maybe a gateway drug to my regular podcast with David J. Roth, formerly of Deadspin, called Dave and Jeb Aren't Mean, which...
Friend of the pod.
Yeah, it was. These two gentlemen are friends of the pod. Jay's been on 1. Collision, you've been on like 3, including one of our favorite episodes, Bookstore Boss Goes Bonkers. But we watch Hallmark movies and we review them sincerely. We're, obviously sometimes they're exasperating. We're going to dunk on them, but we're there not to be mean. And if you enjoy hearing Collision and Jay digress into other pop culture kind of ephemera while dealing with stuff that they really don't respect as art, it's pretty much the exact same deal, except it's the same production company over and over and over.
Awesome.
I will also say that, I'm a listener to both of those, and the first episode of the new season of Quaid in Full dropped, I believe, Friday, at a very opportune time for me, because I was having a really crummy work week, and I was, I'll be honest, a tiny bit skeptical, but it is well worth a listen.
Thank you.
It is a lot of fun. Sarah D. Bunting is maybe the driest person in podcasting.
Yeah.
And it is so good. I went back. There's a bunch of sort of bite-sized things, especially in the first season, because, Dennis Quaid's been around a long time. He started off with small roles. and she gives them the exact amount of attention and respect and affection they deserve. And it is great and is a balm to at least this soul in these troubled times.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Cool. So we're running really long, and I have a really hard out. So let's go ahead and just let everybody know if they'd like to write to the show. I don't even own a television at gmail.com. We've got a Patreon you can find. We also have a Twitter and a Facebook and a whatever else. If people want to get a hold of you, Jeb, how would they do it?
Well, you can go to this. We have a Facebook page, facebook.com/It's Christmastown, which is the if you're into the Hallmark stuff, or you can find me on Twitter at Mobute, Mobute, and then the other associated podcast account on Twitter is Week in Atrocity, named after the dormant current events one I do. But that's where all the new stuff from Quaid in Full and Dave and Jeb will be posted.
Cool. Well, once again, it's been wonderful having you on. To everybody at home, thank you so much for listening and supporting us. And a crab thing.
We love you all, and if you don't think Black Lives Matter, you can't ride the crab.